Geek Out! Hey, and welcome to another installment of Catching Up. I'm Sam.
I'm Chris.
I'm Jake.
And this is our 100th episode.
Yeah!
This week, earlier this week we posted our 100th commentary, Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock. So it's kind of like this weird, it's really, in my mind, this thing that we do, I guess, 3 to 4 times a week is really, honestly, closer to 4 to 5 now.
Yeah. Really.
I'm there for all of them.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, you're the steady underlying thing. In my mind, this is like, it is a glorified hobby, but it is a glorified hobby that for some fucking reason has thousands of downloads literally all over the world.
Yeah. Qatar. Shout out to Qatar.
We're bigger in China though in terms of foreign territories.
But Qatar is struggling. Is trying, and that's why
they're number 3.
Yeah. Shout out to China too. Don't worry. I'm not leaving you guys out. I'm just saying. Qatar. It's like there's one dude in Qatar that's like, I fucking love these guys, but I can only listen to them once every 3 months.
We're like that, any metal band, like where they play here and they play really small clubs, and they go overseas and they play fucking arenas.
They're
massive,
like Hasselhoff.
Cheap Trick. Yeah. Cheap Trick playing the Budokan, but thank you for all the literally thousands of downloads wherever you guys are.
Even if you've never listened to us and just hit the download button, thank you.
Yeah. Hit mark as played or delete on your iTunes.
The one person in Italy, right?
We have quite a few in Italy actually, because we've interviewed multiple Italian artists now.
That's true.
I remember back in the day.
That was our first international download.
Yeah. We were like, Italy!
Yeah.
And then we were like, oh, right, yeah. Ilya's artist was in Italy. She probably listened to the one episode.
It was like, good, and never again. But no, we've got multiple downloads in Italy now. We've got all over Europe, really. Yeah. But quite a few in the UK. I think the UK leads, which doesn't surprise me because they speak the same fucking language.
Yeah.
But it's been a lot of fun. I think the big thing that really, it's led to us talking to some really cool people. I never really intended this to be necessarily just a comics podcast, but it's kind of like, and I guess it isn't, and you're going to see something this week that isn't just a comics interview. Ooh. But it really kind of has gone that way.
Mm-hmm.
I've always loved comics ever since. I think we all have.
Yeah.
And so it's really cool to talk to some of the people that have drawn and written some of the stuff that I just absolutely loved as a kid, and are still doing it now. It's opened up a lot of doors, I think, and it's just a lot of fucking fun.
Yeah. I mean, we wouldn't.
That was getting those interviews, and thank you again to Image Comics and recently to Dark Horse Comics it's been a huge shot in the arm, I think, for the program.
Absolutely, and it's always fun. I think we did this in the 50th episode too, probably, but like thinking back to the first time we ever did this, and to where it is now is so so different and in the best way possible, we're not politely taking turns. Oh, I mean, and again, just
you guys aren't sharing a microphone.
Yeah. Just in case you guys don't remember, just a quick fun thing. I mean, Sam and I were sharing a microphone. I don't think we had headphones on even.
No.
And Sam had a little piece of paper that had each topic neatly written down about what we were going to discuss. And it was almost like we would say our thing, stop, and the next person would go, okay, blah, 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 stop, blah, 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 blah. And the cool thing that you can't...
well, it was Chris's idea, starting with episode 2. He's like, why don't we just, talk?
Yeah.
It's a conversation.
And seriously. But
no-brainer, right?
But the cool thing is that, I think all of us really enjoy that you can't plan for is just all the stupid, fun, reoccurring gags that happen on the show. Of course, I guess a lot of people, I say it fast, but it's thank you very much, that stupid Girl Scout cookie.
It's a Girl Scout cookie.
For some reason, which is not stupid, but for some reason I mentioned that, and I remember saying, I'm going to say that every episode.
There's only been 1 or 2 episodes where it hasn't happened.
Yeah, and
find them.
Good night, Eric Bana, since day one. For some reason, Tea Time with Eric Bana.
Still waiting for Tea Time with Eric Bana.
We'll get there.
Yeah.
Once that happens, then the show's done.
That
That's
Slurpees with Grant Morrison.
Slurpees with Grant Morrison and Tea Time with Eric Bana.
And then the reoccurring, Jesse Ventura.
Oh yeah,
and
Stallone.
We got to bring him back. And was it Jean-Claude Van Damme?
Jean-Claude
and,
or
the
Jeff
dude.
Bridges.
Yeah, Jeff
Jeff
Bridges.
Bridges
they could all come back one of these days.
Yeah, I think another big shot in the arm we got is when, and this was a suggestion of Jake's, is when we started doing the special interest episodes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that was something, we all listen to podcasts on our own. Like we all have favorite people we listen to. And I think one that we all listen to is like the Smodcast Empire, the Kevin Smith stuff. And that was something he was doing a Frasier podcast with Matt Myra. And they were like, you know what? And of course they're really big and famous, so a lot of people download their stuff. But they were like, we're just doing this because we love Frasier. Like, it's such a weird thing. Who does a Frasier podcast? And that got me thinking. And I don't think we ever were getting stale with like this main show, the Geek Out Show, or catching up. But I think
there's always a movie coming out.
Yeah,
there's
exactly.
Always
and it's always we're basically, our life is, when we're not recording, we're still running a giant episode of the show 24. Whenever we're talking, it's constantly.
It's crazy because right around the time we started doing the special episodes, and you leading the charge with the Lethal Weapon series, and then me with the Beatles, and Chris with the laser dicks, and Josh bringing up the Resident Evil stuff.
Yeah.
Right around the time we started those is when we really started to consistently hit interviews.
Yeah, and
Jim Zub led that charge.
Yeah, he did, and I think that just made it's kind of like. I'm doing like the Kiss podcast now, but like it's kind of like when Kiss went off to do their solo albums. That was the kind of thing. Like we never were like, now we're just going to do this. But like Sam said, it was this great shot in the arm where we could just focus and concentrate on this one silly, stupid subject, whatever it was we wanted to talk about. And that was a lot of fun.
I'm always amazed at how many downloads my Laserdisc podcast gets. Because like I know like on Twitter, like I have like a small group of friends that are like Laserdisc enthusiasts, you know, like 3 or 4 guys, and I'm like, oh, I'm sure they listen to it because like I'm always tweeting on my Twitter, when an episode goes up. But like, I mean, it's not a whole lot of downloads, but like each episode gets like at least like 30 downloads like in its first weekend, and I'm like, the fuck.
That was the thing that I was hoping would happen with the solo stuff, is that concentrated dose of whatever it is, someone out there is like, I want to hear a podcast about that. I want to listen to that on my way to work.
People, do respond to me. Like they'll walk up to me and be like, "That's really cool what you do with the Beatles."
Yeah,
and I think I've come up. What if we just called the series "Deconstructing the Beatles"? Why does it have to be a song lyric?
That doesn't. Yeah. Well, it's funny. Speaking of that,
now
like
that you're like halfway through,
literally halfway through.
Someone, talking about people coming up. One of the security officers at work walked out to me one day and he goes, "You got a Kiss podcast," like weird, funny shit like that. And I was like, "Oh shit, how do you know?" But yeah, no, it'll be interesting to see where this evolves to 100 episodes from now.
And again, guys, thank you for indulging us. Thank you, for the downloads, or for talking, or just like not like telling us to shut the fuck up on Facebook for like sharing this like 3 to 4 times a week. Yeah. But speaking of stuff that we're sharing. We've got somebody special, I think, that kind of rings in this 100th episode. Really a superstar artist. He's done a lot of work with Marvel, like a lot of work with Marvel. You probably have seen his art, even if you don't know him by name. His name is Skottie Young, Eisner Award-winning artist. He, he's promoting his creator-owned book with Image Comics, I Hate Fairyland. The second story arc starts Wednesday, June 15th with issue number 6. You can get the first story arc collected, like in trade paperback or like on Comixology right now. And he also released the I Hate Fairyland coloring book, which is messed up, gory fun. But yeah, this is Skottie Young. So thanks for helping us bring this one in. And joining us this week, we've got Skottie Young, an Eisner Award-winning artist. He's worked on The Wizard of Oz. He's done a lot of variant covers for Marvel. He's done the Rocket Raccoon ongoing series, and right now he's got his first Image comic book, I Hate Fairyland. The 6th issue, which kicks off the second story arc, is in comic shops and on Comixology everywhere on Wednesday, June 15th. Skottie, thanks for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So, in reading the first arc for I Hate Fairyland, it kind of feels like a dark inverse to your previous work on The Wizard of Oz. Was that kind of an intent?
Not really. I think, I mean, it might sound kind of, I don't know, artsy, fartsy to say, but maybe everything we end up doing has some sort of intent, even if we don't know that it does. But no, I mean, I didn't specifically think of it as an alternate to that. I mean, I started to kind of play around with this idea while I was working on Oz, but not in any way of as being like, oh, I hate this. I need to tear this down. It was just, I really enjoy reading, or I enjoy reading that kind of stuff. I really dig fairy tales and kind of portal portal stories and things like that. Alice in Wonderland and Never Ending Story, and basically just all the kind of Time Bandits or any of those stories where kids go off to other worlds and explore. So it's really kind of just came from that. I think it's I did Oz because I like to draw that kind of stuff. I like those kind of stories, so it just made sense that when I started to write my own, it was probably going to be in that kind of world as well.
I mean, there's definitely a darker edge, kind of like Time Bandits to it. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I think it's. I think if all you have is Disney's animated version of Alice in Wonderland, then you might think that it's darker. But I mean, really, original fairy tales and even Lewis Carroll's Alice in Wonderland, it's dark. I mean. The actual book of Alice in Wonderland, the queen is not just a queen. The queen's main goal is to chop people's heads off. That's her thing.
It's not just a catchphrase. It's actually what she does.
Yeah, she's literally chopping heads off. So that's a really dark kind of story there. And of course, the Grimm's fairy tales. All the places where we get all of our fairy tales from. I mean, that's some scary stuff too, where it's not just does this glass slipper fit on you? No, it's let's cut off feet and cut off toes or whatever to make our feet fit inside the slippers. It's some pretty gruesome stuff, So it's funny that it's probably closer. Obviously a lot more comedy added to it, but it's probably closer in kind of creepiness gore to the original stuff than it is away from it.
Well, there was we had Gene Ha on the show recently, and May is very much kind of his love letter to portal fiction, all that sort of thing. He's like, yeah, if you look back at the original Peter Pan, it's a teenage boy that refuses to grow up and just kind of walks around an island and kills whatever pirate that crosses his path.
Yeah, I mean, even it's funny is even when you watch the animated version of that, it's pretty crazy. I mean, Peter Pan is just pulling out guns. And shoot, as soon as he gets the kids to Neverland, they're like, oh, let's kill the pirates. Whoa, this is they just want to murder people.
Yeah, I remember watching Hook as a kid and just being so gobsmacked when Rufio dies. Spoilers for a 25-year-old movie, but I was like, oh, that's right, they're playing for keeps now, or
right.
They always were.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting once you actually start, if you go back and remember, I feel like we've gotten into this place where a lot of the fairy tales and things like that, we really clean them up so much. I mean, to the point where, a couple years ago, Maleficent, they came out and kind of retold the Sleeping Beauty fairy tale, but really, Maleficent now was, a good fairy who, was scorned by a lover, and even though she was the evil queen, she still had the heart of gold, and she ends up being the one to save Sleeping Beauty because she loves her really, and you're just like, oh man, you took one of the dopest evil witches in evil witch history. And they just spick and spanned it, So
yeah, not everybody needs a tragic backstory.
Yeah, sometimes it's cool. I mean, even if there is a tragic backstory, I think one of the cool things is let's take Harry Potter for example. I think that's something new and modern. I guess it's newer now. I'm starting to show my age, but Voldemort is a character who, started off like most people a kid, and he has a tragic backstory, but that means that he is straight up evil, it turned him evil and he stayed that way. Voldemort at the end didn't end up hugging Harry, I'm so sorry. Really, really it ended up all work out. It's like, no, I'm a grown man and I am trying to murder you. I'm trying to that's another thing that we don't think about sometimes. Harry Potter's one of the biggest, children's books in a long time, and that's pretty much about a guy who keeps trying to come back to life to murder a kid. So it's always pretty dark, and I think that's what really makes fun stories, or when things are a little bit heavier than you think about. So yeah, it's fun to darken them up and add some of that grit back to it.
Well, and that was kind of the thing with we were big horror fans on here, and we always kind of cite Halloween as one of the primo things. And I always hated that in Halloween 2 they revealed that Michael Myers and Laurie Strode are brother and sister. I was like, he should just be after this random girl that happened to swing by his old house.
Yeah, that was, it wasn't Halloween 2, was it? Wasn't it 3?
No, 2 was where they revealed the Laurie Strode. 3 is where they went off and tried to do an.
Oh, see, I reversed that. I thought 2 was the weird one.
And then even worse though, in 5, he has the niece that he tries to kill, and she takes the mask off, calls him uncle, and he cries. Like everyone.
Oh yeah.
That's one of the worst things of all time.
Was it?
He's got a
ponytail. There was 5 or 4. What was 4?
4 is where he impales the guy with a shotgun. That's really all I remember.
I think 4 was
the
the
return
one where
of Michael Myers with the terrible mask.
I think 4 they introduced the niece, but in 5 right. She's the main victim because Jamie Lee Curtis didn't want to come back.
Yeah,
that's right. I remember the little girl being there in one of them. I can't remember if it was 4 or 5.
Yeah,
who plays one of the slutty
Harris?
teens? Yeah, in the Rob Zombie remake, even though she's like 35.
Danielle Harris.
Yeah, that's right.
So
now, would you say that Gertrude is irredeemably darkened at this point? Because she obviously, those covers really show what happens in the book. I mean, that's not an exaggeration.
Right. We're gonna find that out, I think, as I explore this. I mean, I don't know if I'm revealing too much here, but I think it's fun. I think it's fun to talk about, because sometimes I think when we talk about stories, I think there's authors that have it all worked out. And I think there's the architects and there's the explorers, right? Which is, the architects have this really, really tight outline, and it's all figured out, and they're following all their beats, and they're going to hit it. And those are great stories. And then you've got explorers, who kind of have a general idea of things they want to kind of go search for, and they go searching, and they kind of start writing on page 1, and they see where it goes. And I Hate Fairyland I'm a little bit of both of those kind of authors on this book, where the first storyline, the first 5 issues, was very much architect kind of writing, where I had a plan, and the ending was always kind of my first idea, and so I figured everything out to get to that ending, and it really wasn't, I had all of these ideas for what she would do in this world, if I ever got to tell a lot more stories. So, I had this list with hundreds of, 100 some sentences on it, just this world and that kind of world, and this happens, and maybe this kind of character. So all these random ideas of that you could explore with a character like Gert in a world like that. But I also knew, there's a possibility that sales might be bad, and I don't know, and maybe I only get 5 issues, to tell this thing. So let me tell this story. And then I had all this lists, but I had to pick and choose which ones would fit in that 5 issues, So once I got done with that, and everybody seemed to really be supporting it, and retailers and readers and everybody really came out to support it, and the numbers are really strong. So I was like, oh, cool, I'm going to get to go back and now really see where else I can take this world. And so now I get to enter into the exploring side, where I don't necessarily know exactly where I'm going to be every 20 pages. I have a general idea of where I want to take her over time, but I want to see how I get there. And that's kind of the fun of it right now for me is where, when I did 1 through 5, before I drew any pages, I had all 5 scripts written. Because again, I knew the end, so I wrote it all. In this one, I write an issue and I draw an issue, and I've got some sentences for each one because I've got to solicit these things, ahead of time. But I'm not writing it until I finish. So right now I'm inking issue 7, and I do have part of 8 written, and then I'm going to start writing issue 9 because I have an idea for that one. So it's like just kind of like I'm all over the place. So back to your original question, that was a long way around saying I don't think that I know even maybe if Gert's irredeemable or not. I think that we've seen one version of her, and we've seen her, we've seen what the world has turned her into, but I don't want to say that there's a period at the end of that sentence. I think that it's easy to say that this world, anything can happen in this world, which maybe means, she could see the light, or somebody could come along, or she could figure something out, or something. You never know. But really, I'm just going to have fun kind of exploring it,
Was that kind of a similar approach with Rocket Raccoon, or did you kind of know the broad strokes of that story when you were kind of hashing that out?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of similar. It seems to be my MO. I'll start a run off with kind of a 3 or 4 parter, and kind of tell a bigger story, and then I launch into kind of one and dones that just kind of explore a world. But with these 2 characters in particular, with Rocket and with Rocket and Groot, and then with Gert, both of these they both inhabit worlds that are too big for me to want to just tell a small story in the corner of it, where Rocket is a humorous character who hangs around with this big, he's a talking raccoon who hangs around with a tree and lives in space. So I had a hard time figuring out how I could just tell a little tiny story, that takes place in one town or one city or something. So as soon as I would tell one story, then my instinct was, I want to, man, how, I watched Pacific Rim or something. I'm like, man, how cool would it be to do like a kaiju story, and because Rocket's in space and this isn't Guardians of the Galaxy, I'm not doing the proper, I'm not doing the main book. I've got all this freedom to really play around. So let's make Groot a kaiju, like let's make Grootzilla, and really tell a story out in space with a big monster, and ends up being just a virtual reality video game that they were playing or whatever. So it gave me a chance to really explore all types of stuff, which is the same thing with Gert, which is I take her to this world of imagination where pretty much anything's possible and any kind of person is possible. So the last thing I want to do is kind of get stuck in a story that is on rails, to where when I come up with an interesting idea for a character, I can't just throw it in real quick. Now I can, where I'm going, okay, I don't have plot points A, B, C, and D already locked in. So I have a general place where I'm heading. And on the way there, if I come up with an idea for a story inside of Larry's hat, I can add that in issue 9. Boom, issue 9 is now that story versus, where I was with 1 through 5, or where you are sometimes when you're doing big arcs where every 5 or 6 issues a story has to wrap up. I'm kind of basically, instead of this being a roller coaster, or a platform video game, we're now going free roaming. We're taking the character, we're going to drop her in the world and see where she heads, and kind of build her up a little bit, introduce some more characters, and just slow the pacing down and explore and see what happens from there.
I mean, sometimes the side quests are the best part of the video game. Just look at Majora's Mask, man.
I'll take your word for it.
Sure. I have to say though, the whole Rocket Raccoon thing was kind of like this big buddy cop thing in space, and it's just so genius that a woodland creature's best friend would be a tree. An animate walking, talking tree.
Yeah, for sure. It's I don't know who teamed them up together at first, but I'm sure that was their clever kind of pun style of a team up when they first had the idea.
Now, with the second arc for I Hate Fairyland, in that case, since it wasn't mapped, Hickman, of course, has everything mapped out to the end before he even starts. But
right.
How easy was that second story? Because you really end on a pretty big, without giving the game away, a pretty big crossroads at the end of that first arc.
It's a lot easier than you think, and I'll let you'll see when you read it. Because it really was. It wasn't that it was the story itself was easy. It was the decision was the challenge. Was, do I go left or do I go right? It's do I and that it was really deciding which direction I go, which was my biggest challenge. And once I decided which direction to go, then it was from there. It was pretty easy because I had a million ways to go after I made the decision. So. I didn't find it that hard. It's actually it's fun and it's freeing and it feels a lot less restricting. Because of the first one, any of your favorite bands, they spent years on their first album, right? And so that second album, you never know what it's going to be because they'll probably spend a year on it, versus the 10 years they spent on their first album. But sometimes that makes for a great album because all of a sudden you're really listening to like a musician's instincts. And that's kind of how I feel here, which is, Fairyland was really crafted slowly over the course of many years. And so and all 5 of those issues were written about a year before I ever drew them. So by the time I finished those and got published, that story had been with me for a long time. So this is now me feeling like I'm really exploring, So I'm discovering things not too much longer before you guys are discovering, which is super fun, because I'm hoping that the excitement of that kind of translates to the page, and when you read it, you feel as like, oh, I didn't see that coming because I didn't see it coming.
It's pretty cool. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't kind of cite all the variant covers that you do for Marvel. How much? It's kind of a twofold question. How much like creative license do you get designing those covers, and do you have a particular favorite, be it a Brian Bendis mic drop or a Moon Knight hanging from the crescent moon? Is there any that really leaps out for you?
Well, first of all, on the first question was the freedom. You know what? Oddly enough, I have a lot of freedom there. Honestly, I don't do sketches or anything for approval. I just turn in finished covers. And I will tell you, I've been doing them 4 years now, which is crazy. I think I'm heading towards 200. Like I'm pretty close to 200. And the number of changes on those I could count on one hand. And by changes, it usually is, his hair is blonde. So I don't think that I've had to make. I cannot think of a drawing change that I've had to make on any of those, 180, 90 that I've done so far. I don't think I've had to make one single change. Now, part of that comes from the fact that also, I've been working with Marvel for 15 years. I started in 2001. So,
Spider-Man.
Yep. So I've been there a long time, so I know what I can do and can't do there. I kind of know the standards and practices of that company backwards and forwards. So I know exactly how far I can push and how, where not to go and what not to waste my time trying to do because I'm not going to get it through. So that makes it a lot easier and they appreciate it because I'm not going to, it makes everybody's job a lot easier. And as far as favorites go, man, it's so tough. Because every kind of one, well, I really liked the Avengers playing the video game. Like they were on it was, I think, for Infinity. It was Hickman's Infinity event, the first one. And all the Avengers are kind of like standing on each other. They're playing like a old school arcade cabinet. Mm-hmm. And I was really happy with that one because of kind of the narrative of it wasn't too long after the Avengers movie and things like that, which you guys, I assume everybody's seen the Avengers, yes?
Oh yeah.
Okay. So the cover that I'm talking about has all the little kid Avengers and they're basically playing like a cabinet of like Galaga.
Which is kind of like what Tony Stark's doing when they pour down.
Exactly. And if you remember, he actually makes that joke midway through the movie.
Yeah.
He goes in, he's like, "Oh, that guy's playing Gallagher or whatever," right?
My favorite lines.
Like he actually makes fun, and they basically foreshadow the end of the movie, which is literally aliens coming out of the sky as the people in the bottom shoot up at them.
Did a hell of a lot better than Pixels.
Yeah. So I was fun just to kind of do a play on that and see how many people got it. One that's probably I wouldn't say that's on anybody's favorite list, but I just liked it was the Morbius one. Oh. So it's just got like a little baby Morbius floating above a grave and he's drinking a bottle of blood. I like it. Again, you're not going to meet probably a person on the planet who says their favorite character is Morbius. But that one was really one of my favorites. And one more. There was one I was just thinking of, and now I'm off track. But
was it Black
anyway,
Thanos? That was a fun one.
Which one?
Black Bolt screaming so loud it blows Thanos' like.
Oh, that one was fun. Oh no, it was again, it was for Original Sin, and because I think the whole story plot of Original Sin was somebody had stolen like the Watcher's eyes or something.
Yeah, killed Uatu and stole his eyes.
Stole his eyes, right? So my cover for that was Deadpool holding these giant magic eyes in front of his face, like joking around, like check it out, I got these eyes. And in my sketch, I had drawn a character throwing up, so like they're all grossed out by him doing this. And I had drawn one character throwing up, and throw up so hard it was like, lifting him up off the ground. And again, because I've worked there long enough, I thought, you know what, I'm going to draw this, and I'm going to draw vomit, and it's not going to make it through. Because, these still are little kids, and so, we try to keep it a little cleaner and less gross than maybe we would, I would if it was for older audiences. But
like I Hate Fairyland.
yeah. So, but I was, again, one of those days where I was like most proud of myself when I had the idea, like, instead of erasing the person who puked, I just made the person puking Iceman, and he was puking ice. So I got the puke joke in without it being super gross, and it's funnier. It's actually like puke is okay funny, but ice puke is that's perfect. Primo. So yeah, those are a couple of my favorites.
It's funny because I used to work at a comic shop, and I guarantee you, every comic shop, no matter what day or what time it is, they just sit around and they talk favorite Skottie Young covers. They got like the variants are on the wall. Like
there's almost 200.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah, you got plenty to talk about. But we had the variants on the wall, and then when the new variants come out, everyone scrambles to look for the Skottie Young one. But even before we had you on, we were kind of just like, what are some of your favorite Skottie Young covers? And it's the same kind of thing where you think of one, and then you think of another one.
Yeah.
No, it's definitely this one. But yeah, the one that always cracks me up is for me personally is Moon Knight hanging on the crescent moon.
Right.
Because the look on his face is just this like disdain of, why am I up here?
He's like, of course.
Yeah, of course
this is what just happened
stuck on the moon.
Right.
So yeah, it's classic.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the cool thing about doing those, and that's why it's so hard to pick one, is because it's never about the finish that I'm all happy with. It's usually about that moment where I have the idea. That's like where the idea breaks, and that's where it becomes fun, where, because let's face it, like I'm not Travis Charest or Olivier Coipel or, Alex Rossing, with these covers. Like, I never in a million years thought I would be a cover artist, because I'm just like a cartoonist who does, quick ink brush drawings, and, usually when I think of cover artists, it's the like the Jill Thompsons of the world, and the Alex Rosses, and the, Assad Ribicks, who, can paint, and it just like everything's realistic. So, but for me, it's about the idea. I think of these as more of my version of the Far Side, or, the comic strips I read growing up. This is to me much more about a comic strip and less about like drawing skill. And so it's never like when I get done, like, man, I really drew the hell out of that. It's usually more, like I said, like that moment of being like sitting there for 3 hours, like, okay, what's the, I can't do the puke. What's a funny joke if I can't do the puke? And then boom, it clicks that it's Iceman, and you're like, that sticks in your mind, like, man, that's fun. That was a fun minute. Or that time where you're like, I have to do a Drax cover, and I literally cannot think of a Drax joke. And then, so the joke is literally Rocket being like, sorry, dude, there's literally nothing funny about you. Like, the joke about you is there is no joke, and he's got all the like Carrot Top gear on him, the arrow through the head, and he's trying to, he's got the Drax puppet and the whole nine. He's trying to find something funny about him. He just can't. So it's those kind of moments when you're just like that day I was banging my head against the wall. Like, maybe have I hit my wall? Is there no more jokes to be had? And I'm like, no, I just think that Drax is a hard character to make funny,
Yeah. Was that you mentioned Far Side and Larson's Far Side? I also get kind of a big Calvin and Hobbes vibe. Were those kind of big influences kind of with you?
Oh yeah, I mean Peanuts, Calvin and Hobbes, Garfield, Families. I mean pretty much anything that was in the strips in those days.
Except for Beetle Bailey.
even Beetle Bailey. I mean Berkeley Breathhead with Bloom County was huge for me. All those cartoonists in the 80s and 90s were really big for me. I was an actual paperboy. I was, back when that was a job for kids.
Oh, more than just an NES game.
Yeah, I was. I mean, that game was my game because that was literally my job for 3 or 4 years through elementary school. I think I started when I was in 3rd grade and had a paper route from 3rd grade up to 7th grade. So for about 4 years, I woke up about 4 o'clock in the morning and rode my bike around town delivering papers. So because of that, though, I always had access to the comic strips instantly and was always excited to check those out. But yeah, I mean, Calvin and Hobbes and Calvin and Hobbes, Garfield, Bloom County, the Far Side was huge, and of course, like Mad Magazine was massive on me. So like that's a lot of where I think I just like the silly. Really over the top, on the nose jokes, Kind
of makes sense given the sense of humor, especially the Mad Magazine connection. There's kind of that going on in I Hate Fairyland.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, it's huge. I mean, huge. I mean, because Mad Magazine was always that, right? Where it was like it was still for kids, but kind of maybe not. Like still, it was like kids could look at it, but it was still aimed at adults. So it was like just walks up to the line of being too vulgar, but scales back right before it jumps off the cliff. And
yeah, there was always a bit of grit, unless it was like, I feel like Spy vs. Spy was for like everybody, but everything else in Mad Magazine, there was definitely a bit of grit to it.
Yeah, I seem to remember going back then, there was still like, it was like even like nude, like every now and then I think Sergio would draw some just straight up boobies in there, like, and I was always like as a kid like, oh, am I supposed to be looking at this, But yeah, I mean, Mad Magazine was a big thing for me before I ever knew what superhero comics were.
Now, there's also going to be at the time of this post, the I Hate Fairyland's got an adult coloring book in stores. Was that something that Image kind of approached you to see if you were interested, or had you seen that with like Spawn and was like, I can totally, or Walking Dead and was like, there's totally room for this, like because it suits itself so well given the nature of the story.
No, it actually wasn't the Spawn and Walking Dead stuff. I mean, they had that when I brought this up, that was in the works. So they already had something going, which worked out well for me. But no, what it was I'm a big fan of these artist editions, right? That come out. IDW puts out these big, oversized, actual scans of the pages, and you get to see the artwork, black and white. But then Rick Remender and Matteo Scalera had released a oversized, like 11x17 edition of like issue number 1 of Black Science.
Yeah, I think it was at San Diego last year. It was,
yeah. Yeah, and then and so it's just this like black and white version, 11x17 of Black Science. I thought, man, that is so cool. So I thought maybe I'll do that. Maybe I'll do like a cool just black and white version of the book or whatever, and do that. And but then I thought, here's the difference, right? Matteo Scalera is like the best. Like he's amazing, and his work's so intricate, and there's so much nuance to his inking, and he did all these beautiful washes, and this is all this gray tones and stuff in his work. So it completely made sense to do an oversized, black and white version of that. If you take my work is not meant to be seen at actual size. Like, I am completely a cartoonist in that I'm going to draw big in it, and for you to probably appreciate it in the right way, it needs to be shrunk. So a lot of that, a lot of the mess kind of comes together and tightens up. It's like if you're just looking at something kind of ugly, if you squint, it gets like a lot prettier. And so that's kind of my work. Like if you look at it too big, it's really not what you want to be looking at, but so you want to shrink it a little bit. So that's when I was kind of like, I hit up Image and was asking them, and they were like, well, I said, but I don't know about that. I was like, maybe, these coloring books are getting kind of big. So maybe instead of me doing an artist edition, I lean the coloring book way. And they just happen to have literally getting the proofs in for the Walking Dead and Spawn one. So they were already in the middle of it and had information for me on that, which was great. And again, like you said, my work kind of really lends itself to that side of things way more because it's all open, lines, and this stuff is all kind of crazy, and I had a ton of it, and I had, doing 2 covers per issue and stuff. So I had all this stuff laying around and some cool double spreads and stuff to put in the book. So yeah, that's kind of how that came about.
So the coloring book's just a compilation of art from the first 5 issues, not just say issue 1.
It is. No, actually, yeah, it's not even issue 1. No, it's basically, it's a lot of, it's all, I want to say it's most of the covers that I've done for the book. So the covers, the variant covers, even a couple covers from the next run made it in there. And then some of the really cool shots from the issues. So, like the shot with all the fawns, the zombie fawn, the zombie fawns, and you got the page where the moon's getting his brains blown out. Well, I isolated that panel, and now you get to color just that panel. And
that set the tone so well for that.
It was probably my favorite panel in that issue.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, that's funny because I'm glad to hear that because when I was trying to figure out that first issue, the original intro to her getting to Fairyland was really long. It was like 7 or 8 pages of setup. And I just was like, and so that moon page didn't happen until like page 12 or 14 or something, my original script. And I was like, that is too long. Like I need people to know, like me and Jason Howard. I don't know if you got, Jason Howard does Trees with Warren Ellis and worked on some books with Robert Kirkman. And he's one of my best buds. And so I just kept being like, man, this book isn't about a girl getting to Fairyland. Like that's not my book. My book is about her already there and hating it. And so I was so troubled by the beginning and initially, so I ended up just, you see what was in the book, which is like, she's there on the page 1, page, I just, you know what? I'm just gonna have her floor eater and that's it. Like this is not a story about how somebody finds their way to Fairyland. It's how somebody needs to get out of it. And so I thought, by page 4, the moon blows up is really exactly kind of where I needed that to happen. So everybody from Jump knew exactly what to think with this book because I had done the Oz books. Oz actually helped me in a lot of ways tell people what this book wasn't, because I knew people would see the artwork possibly and assume what it would be for. And I needed to tell people as quick as possible, this isn't that, this is something really dumb and crazy and wacky,
Can we expect the recurring theme of the narrator meeting their untimely end in every issue continuing?
No, that's going away for a while. That was I thought 5 issues.
You don't have that just beating a dead horse.
Yeah, I mean, I was pretty close to it. It's lucky that the first arc was only 5 issues. If it would have went 6 or 7 issues, I think people would have started to throw up the yellow flag and call foul because. I never intended that either. The moon was always going to get killed at the beginning. That was the thing. And then I was just going to move on because, the story would start there. But then I was like, man, it was, all these fairy tales, they always start with that. And again, this story being more of a beginning, middle, and end story, it made sense to have that reoccur because you're in the same tale, so that makes sense. But I find that moving forward, if I'm going to jump into some stories that are going to be a little bit more, I don't want to say one and dones because they still all kind of tie it together in a big story over time. But if it's going to be more self-contained issues, I didn't want to waste any real estate on a joke that I got the punchline came already,
Just it's probably my favorite twist on Goodnight Moon.
Yeah, it's pretty good. I've read that book so many times. Jesus Christ.
Without giving the game away, what can we expect with issue 6?
Issue 6, you are going to Okay, spoiler for anybody who has not read the first 5 issues of I Hate Fairyland. Turn it off now. But obviously, at the very end of the first story arc, she is the queen of Fairyland now. So issue 6 is going to be, her dealing with that, and what does that mean? Like, what does a queen of Fairyland do? How does somebody like Gert do that? Like, somebody who's used to roaming the world, and having no rules and no responsibility. What does that mean for a character like that? And what's the day to day of being a queen, and what's her options? Will she be a good queen? Is she a bad queen? We don't know. But so it's going to explore a little bit of that, and we'll see where that lands.
Yeah, and I guess if we're going into spoiler land, I mean, I'm sure the citizens of Fairyland haven't forgotten what she spent the first 5 issues doing, and now effectively the lunatic is in charge of the madhouse. So yeah, I think there'll be.
Yeah, I would imagine she's probably pretty shitty at the job. Yeah.
Fair bet.
Yeah.
Now, Skottie, something we ask everybody that comes on the show: what are you currently geeking out over?
Like comics or just in general?
Anything, man. Sky's the limit.
I really am geeking out about. I'm always geeking out about comics, and it's never stopped. But I'll just throw a bunch of stuff. So comics, I just finished. Finally, like I read the first couple issues of Paper Girls when it first came out, and then I decided to hold off because I liked it and I knew I'd get the trade. So I bought the trade of that and read through it, and this weekend, and really dug that by Cliff Chang and Brian K. Vaughan and Matt Wilson. So I really dug that. I'm really loving Invader Zim.
Oh yeah.
I think that was I discovered that show really late, like way years after it was off, and fell in love with it. And I think that Jonan and crew coming back to do it, the voice is spot on. It really feels like, the show's back, without it being on television. So I think that's great. Other than that,
more creative license because they're not on Nickelodeon anymore. It's true.
Yeah, and I don't know how involved Nickelodeon is with that or whatever, because I know they still, they still own it or whatever. But I think that's fantastic. I mean, Jeff Lemire and Dustin Nguyen's Descender's great. Rick Remender seems to be just doing everything great. Hickman and Dragadas and Frank Martin's East of West is always good. So that's some comic stuff, and then of course Game of Thrones is on right now, so me and my wife are watching that. And but my favorite show on television is Veep.
Oh yeah.
My favorite show on I think that is.
Well, we live in the D.C. area, and so yeah, they film a good chunk of it right down here. So
yeah, it is. There are so many jokes in that show that it's impossible for you to catch them all. It's that subtle and hardcore and great. It's amazing.
Yeah, I'm kind of worried since Armando Iannucci isn't the showrunner anymore to see what's going to happen with it.
Well, I mean, so far this season, the good news is David Mandel is the showrunner, and he's been involved with the not Larry Sanders show, Curb Your Enthusiasm, and the Seinfeld stuff. David Mandel's been around for a long time, and the really cool thing about David Mandel is he is a massive comic book fan. The current showrunner of Veep, he is like an original art master. He owns. I'm fairly certain he owns an issue of Watchmen, if not more.
All the Dave Gibbons original pages.
Yeah, he literally owns original pages, like original issues of Watchmen. I know this because he actually owns some of my originals as well. Right. He owns that, so the connecting Star Wars covers.
Yeah.
David Mandel, he owns those. So and so far this season with him show running, I'm loving it. So I don't think you have anything to worry about. He's there and he's killing it.
Sweet. Yeah, I mean, I've always been a big fan of the kind of like layered comedies. Like 30 Rock, I felt like had a lot of jokes that if you didn't that there was so many jokes per minute that it was hard to kind of catch it all. You'd have to watch it twice, and Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt kind of worked the same way.
Yeah, and that's where I think that's exactly where I think the Veep is, and and maybe leading the pack in that, where they're so tight. Where like I think Kimmy Schmidt and 30 Rock, while I love those are still like very campy, over the top humor where the jokes are a mile a minute. But this is so kind of biting and real world.
Yeah,
it's sometimes you're almost like, oh my god, I didn't even
savage.
Get it.
It's just
it's so hardcore.
I've been watching it on Amazon Prime, so like I'm like only 2 seasons in, but it's just like the most fun thing to do to come home after work and just watch them just rip each other into pieces and be hilarious all at the same time. It's fun.
It's so good. Yeah, there was the one episode, I think in season 1, where one of them yells at like Mike McClintock, the press secretary.
Yeah.
And at one time they're running a race, and he smarts off to one of them, and one of them says, "Fuck you, you fucking Lorax," because he has the big orange mustache. And it was so quick and so fast. And I don't think that unless you were like, if you were a recent parent or something and you've read the Lorax a million times like I have, like that joke was so perfect. You just I couldn't handle it. Like that won me over forever. That show could end up being terrible, and it'll still be my favorite because of that joke.
I think somebody like Matt Walsh credits Veep to being the show where he's no longer confused for Louis C.K. anymore.
Yeah, that's great.
But so the 6th issue of I Hate Fairyland is in stores everywhere on Wednesday, June 15th. The adult coloring book is out in stores now, as is the first trade. And, of course, you can get all these on either in comic shops, bookstores, or Comixology. Skottie, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
You guys had run into Skottie Young at AwesomeCon, the DC comic book convention, recently, didn't you?
Yeah. He remembered the interview, which was nice. I mean, because it was only like a week ago or so that we did the interview. But we walked up, and I was like, hey, we're on the Geek Out show. We did an interview with you just recently, and he was like, oh, Mount Vernon guys, and I was like, pointed right at Jake, and
I was like, hello.
I don't know if the Mount Vernon section will make the final cut. What you guys hadn't heard after we're done talking to Skottie Young, apparently one of his kids is really into American presidents.
It's funny because like a couple of people we've interviewed have mentioned being fans of presidents.
My undergraduate thesis was on George Washington.
Yeah, and it just so happens that like I work at Mount Vernon now, so it's always kind of funny that like that comes up. But yeah, I guess I keep forgetting that was off mic. But yeah, he was.
Well, it was on mic, but off record.
Well, off record, yeah. But I mean, about his son being a big president fan, and the fact that I worked at Mount Vernon and stuff, George Washington, and but it was kind of funny because he said another podcast came up to him and was like, and they were talking about George Washington, and he was like, Mount Vernon guy, and they were like, no, nobody here. So the fact that he rememred was funny.
Yeah.
But I remember that interview being a very, very fun interview. It was. Dare I say one of the most fun interviews that we've had for me, at least, and we've had some great interviews.
We have, there's going to be one coming next week who was also at AwesomeCon this week that'll show up. You'll hear that next week. That was a lot of fun too.
The most
fun, even got Josh laughing on mic. So
Josh spoke on mic during the interview. That's the cool thing. But I mean, I love when they relax, when they start to relax, and they start to just have fun.
For me, the most validating thing is when we're wrapping up, we're saying our goodbyes and everything, like, hey, I'll put it out this date and I'll email you and we'll pump the shit out of it on social media. And they're like, oh yeah, man, this was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
As soon as I know that it just wasn't another fucking job for them, that they actually like seem to enjoy themselves, then it's like, all right, cool. Yeah, we strive to be good hosts.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. The Blackjack Ketchum guys were like that too. I mean, they even like tweeted out like,
Brian Shermer tweeted it like twice within a 24-hour period.
It was awesome. Yeah. So it is fun to make that connection and make them laugh and have a good time. Like that's
getting Nicola Scott to geek out over Wonder Woman.
Oh, that was so cool.
Getting Joe Kelly to laugh at Guts Man.
I mean, that's right.
Talking about Bowie with Meredith Gran.
Yeah.
There's a bit, or talking Sam Peckinpah with Alex
Sam
DeCampi.
Peckinpah with Alex DeCampi. And, it's just again, even saying these names, it's amazing that we've had these people on. And
Oh yeah, I mean, never in a million years would I think basically the uncredited co-creator of Deadpool, the week Deadpool came out in theaters, would be on my fucking podcast with you guys.
Or I got to geek out with Tim Seeley about how much I've loved Hack Slash.
And you cosplayed as
and he liked. And I believe retweeted the picture of me and our friend Jinx as Cassie and Vlad, and it was so much fun. I wish he had been able to, had been at AwesomeCon, so I could be one of a dozen people that comes up and is like, oh, I'm dressed up as one of these characters.
Talking to Josh Williamson for over an hour.
Yeah, that was great.
About
God. Dances with Wolves.
Dances with Wolves. We have had a lot of fun interviews, and we hope that you guys dig them too. It's something that's really, if you think about it, it's only showed up in the past 6 months. But it's been a huge boon for us.
We've pretty much become an interview podcast,
which is awesome.
Yeah. And I hope you guys because off mic we've talked about the structure of the show, and one of the things that I think we do really well, not so much on this episode because we kind of geeked out over it being 100 episodes, but our show, we get right into the interview. A couple other podcasts that we listen to, they're their main draw for the episode is oh, hey, we got this person to interview, but before you get to listen to that, we have all of this stuff, blah blah blah. And we were no, fuck that. If we're going to advertise as it being an interview with this person, we're going to get right to it. Have a quick intro.
This was, sorry Scotty, this one was the exception because it was the 100th episode.
Yeah but it was great. And then all the bullshit, us just jib jabbing away, it comes later, which I'm hopefully you guys still appreciate, because whatever, we still get the credit for the download if you just skip to the next episode.
What he's trying to say is thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
I feel like our audience is smart enough to see through my vain attempt at humor.
Yeah.
they've
been listening to
for 100 episodes. Grind Nolan.
Theoretically.
Be that soundbite of the train just or the bad brake pads.
I did recently with the intention of upgrading our podcast to a new level. I did recently download a programmable soundboard onto my phone that I'm thinking about easing in.
What's funny, this is the 100th episode, and I finally have one of the things on my microphone.
Yeah. By the way,
you, Chris.
happy 100th episode. Thanks, I actually have I believe the correct terminology for it is windsock for each microphone.
I had a literal
as opposed
sock.
to it used to be a wool
a literal sock.
A wool sock for winter hiking. Yeah, it's still right there next to you.
This will go in the Museum of Natural History one day.
Yeah, not American history, natural history, right next to the Hope Diamond.
That's right. That's right.
It's covered in your spittle.
It's natural.
Yeah.
It's wool.
Yeah. Organic, baby. But the yeah, I mean it's been a wild ride so far. What do you now? I think I've kind of aired it out, and I think I've put it out on the ether. I was maybe not the biggest fan of X-Men Apocalypse, which came out recently. But
I can't remember. Did we talk about that at all last week?
We did not.
No. Okay. We held back.
We did. Well, we were busy because we were kind of under the gun.
That's true.
We had an interview.
We were thinking on the run.
Yeah, band on the run. But it was my thing about it. And Chris, you actually enjoyed it, or at least held it in the same esteem as some of the other X-Men films.
Yeah, my big thing was that it was still to quote Josh, it was a movie. But no, I found myself enjoying it while I was sitting in the theater, and part of that was I set the bar super low for it, because I was right from the beginning, I was like, these trailers are not impressing me at all. So I don't have very high expectations for it. I went in and I sat there and I was like, you know what? This is still an exciting movie. There's things happening. Stuff's going on. A couple of my favorite characters are on the screen. So cool. I was able to enjoy what was, going on in the moment. There are some things that I'm critical about it for. Everything seems to take longer than it needs to. Down to people move slower than they should be. You know, like they're and there's like scenes in there that like didn't make sense. Like, why is this still in here? Like, you cut out Jubilee's character, more or less, mostly. But like the scene of like Hank and Mystique walking in and looking at the Firebird or Thunderbird or whatever the hell they call the ship,
the Blackbird.
Sure. As if they've never had a jet, even though they had one in first class.
Yeah.
Things like that. I'm like, do you remember the movies that you made less than like 5 years ago?
Slight spoilers. It's the Blackbird is essentially a Chekhov's gun. It blows up, you know.
Yeah. But yeah, so like
that's the only reason it exists. That's the only reason they make a big hullabaloo about it.
Yeah. And like it could have been like, oh, you're upgrading. Yeah. But no, they were like, Mystique was literally like, oh, you have a ship now. It's like, you were in it.
Yeah. My thing about the film is it's not necessarily incompetently made.
Mm-hmm.
All those pieces are there.
Yeah.
And outside of, for some reason, shittier visual effects.
That's my other big critique. Like, I'm like, why are these special effects all rushed?
Yeah.
First Class had better effects.
Yeah. How is this like not, you know, how are the effects from a 5-year-old movie better?
Yeah. Why is it when Jean Grey goes to walk, you know, on air that she's wiggling because you weren't able to match her motion with the camera panning? Because I know this is all fucking green screen.
Yeah. I mean, how my thing is like, it's not incompetently made necessarily, but the heart's not there anymore. For me, the big example is like the big Quicksilver scene, because again, spoilers. If you've listened to us for 100 episodes, come on.
Yeah, and it's been out for like 2 weeks.
Don't
now.
care about spoilers.
Yeah. Don't. We're doing you a service. It's bigger. It's more ambitious. It's
explosion.
There's an explosion. It's set to a cooler song, but it's just not. Because it's not coming from a place of creativity or inventiveness, not from that pure imagination like the time in a bottle sequence in Days of Future Past. It's just like, let's just do the same thing bigger and better. And it doesn't...
And then put a camera rig on him while he's running that just looks weird.
Again, visual effects somehow worse.
And then, like, my biggest gripe with that scene in particular, I was like, based on this scene, are Quicksilver's powers that he's really fast, or that he can stop time, or like kind of like manipulate time? Because he's doing both. Like the way that it's being presented to me on the screen, because like it looks like the explosion moves slowly, and then he zooms in, and then the explosion stops, and he like fucks around with whatever, you know. He sometimes just poking, you know, eating a pizza, other times actually like rescuing people, and then the explosion ramps up a little bit, you know, like to half speed again, and then he comes back in, you know, like I was just like, it seems inconsistent, you know. Granted, you know, maybe in this universe he does have certain temporal powers. Like, I'm the first one to be like, whatever, it's a movie, it's allowed to do whatever the fuck it wants. But like, it just seemed weird that like he can seemingly mess with time in just that scene, you know. And then, yeah,
for me, that's kind of like a example that works to the film to a broader scale. Like the finale isn't necessarily incompetently done, but it is kind of a fucking mess, you know. There's like Magneto's just kind of like in a bubble, like.
And also, why didn't Quicksilver say that he's Magneto's son? I feel like his turn to being.
He was too busy watching his dad and Jean Grey do like air Tai Chi to rebuild the X-Mansion.
Yeah, yeah, right. But I mean, like during the climax, you know, like that would have been Magneto has a turn where he saves Charles.
Yeah,
and like I feel like if the bigger turn would have been saving his son.
Yeah, like, hey, by the way, you're my dad. It's like, oh. Yeah, that's right. We do have to, like, kind of bring him back to the light.
I thought that was going to be the Return of the Jedi moment, because the movie, for some reason, wanted to talk about Return of the Jedi.
It was the cheap dig.
Yeah, well, it was correct in the fact that, like...
One, fuck you, because I love Return of the Jedi. Yeah. But two, like, so, you know, like, we get it. You didn't direct X3.
Also, they're like, the third one's always the worst.
This is the third one.
Yeah, well, one, yes, it is the third one of that new trilogy. Second off, how many? And by 1985 or 1983, how many inferior third films are there? Rocky 3 is awesome.
Yeah.
Godfather 3 isn't out yet.
Has Superman 3 come out yet?
No, it's 85.
Okay. So.
And same with
Jaws 3D is better than Jaws 2.
and
No way.
Is it not?
Jaws 3D is terrible.
Oh.
It's not
Although
Jaws 4.
Jaws 3D is great because it introduces the world of Dennis Quaid, and the way that they blow the shark up
Yeah, with a
is
grenade.
Well, not just a grenade. It's a guy is stuck between the teeth like fucking
Yeah.
whatever. He's just like
Day of the Dead.
Popcorn.
Well, yeah, popcorn. He's like a colonel, and,
Oh, yeah.
and the guy he's like he's somehow still holding like rigor mortis the thing, and they're like, shoot
I thought
it.
it was like on
Maybe it was on it, but yeah, either way,
and,
he's stuck
like, he
in
uses
between.
like a hook, like
Yeah,
a harpoon
it's-
hook
yeah.
to pull the pin or something.
And then it explodes into a
Yeah.
pair of 3D Jaws.
Oh, it's terrible.
Literal
So
3D Jaws.
And
It's fucking terrible.
fucking Friday the 13th 3D hadn't come out yet.
And that's like, and Friday, Dream Warriors is like the best.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
That
know.
hadn't come out yet.
Yeah, Season of the Witch, I don't think had come out yet.
Mm-mm.
So, yeah, where are they pulling this? It's just a cheap
Yeah.
dig, you
Yeah.
know?
Goldfinger's like amazing.
And,
Yeah.
yeah.
And that's like
and-
way
and-
earlier, but
and
whatever.
and-
It's still the
yeah,
third one.
It's just a pointless meta moment
Basically,
that took me out of the movie.
Yeah.
oh, and literally the scene comes out of nowhere. It's just there. And it's like,
Yeah.
hey, get it. Yeah. And it's like, hey, Bryan Singer, you're fucking self-fulfilling prophecy because this movie fucking
Yeah.
sucks.
You cut out everything else from the Jubilee,
Yeah.
X-Men hanging out the mall sequence, except for that because you wanted to take that pot shot.
Yeah. Like, yes, if we're ranking the original trilogy, I'm going to put Return of the Jedi third, but it's not because I hate it. It's just, it's third, whatever.
Yeah.
But
If we're ranking the first three X-Men movies, yeah, Last Stand's my least favorite
Yeah.
of those first three X-Men movies.
the thing is, though, like, I was thinking about this, like, how do I talk about this movie? The shortest Guinness Book of World Record movie review of all time was the word no. And that is how I feel like I'd rate this movie, because
That's not what you want.
I fucking
Are you
hate,
not entertained?
I hate this movie. And there's not very many movies I hate, but I hated this movie. There is very little in this movie I enjoyed. And the part that I was hanging on to like a fucking dingleberry was the Weapon X Wolverine moment, because they're like, oh, it's Barry Windsor Smith, man. It's straight out of the comic books. Straight out. And I was like, fuck yeah, they're going to do it. And I was talking to Sam before.
Personally,
and Chris.
that was my most.
Well, I'm getting to that.
Yeah, I'll let you talk. Yeah.
Because I was like, if it does Weapon X, then all is forgiven. That's all I want to see. And then I remember I was like, and if it does the Phoenix, and Sam was like, why do you care about the Phoenix? And I was like, I have no fucking idea. I don't care about the Phoenix. And yes, I'm not the biggest X-Men fan, but I've enjoyed the movies, like for the most part. Like,
Dude, I've read so many X-Men books, and look, I get it.
Yeah.
It's not the book.
Well, no, I mean,
It's
like,
not
I'm
the
saying
animated series.
anyone
but it's still cool.
anyone can jump on me because I don't read X-Men. They'll be like, oh, well, fuck you. But like, the Weapon X moment happens, Wolverine's, and like, I'm like, oh shit, here it comes. And they start zooming up. He's got like Hulk pants, which is fine because they're not gonna have Donger hanging out, which that would have been sweet. But like, they don't have, Hugh Jackman Donger. And
R-rating.
and they keep going up, and then you see like three wires. You're like, okay, and then it reveals the stupidest headgear. And when I say stupid, like, I've read Weapon X. Out of context, it's very dumb, but it looks cool in context, and it's a comic book. Now, granted, are they going to cover this, like, the Star's face, even though Hugh Jackman's in it for like maybe 10 minutes? Not even 10 minutes. No, but I remember when that scene happened. That was when
Carl Urban did it.
That's right. All the air just let out there, because I was like, that moment made me hate Weapon X Wolverine, because I was like, look at how stupid he looks. Now, granted, the letting him go full on feral rage was awesome, but it couldn't take back the fact that the reveal of finally doing Weapon X Wolverine, like what they were saying, Barry Windsor Smith, looked stupid. And like, for me, that is like how Sam was saying with the Quicksilver scene. The reveal of Weapon X and it being stupid and you just being like, this whole thing is dumb, is a perfect encapsulating thing of the entire movie for me. Because it's, and like, it's been a while, Sam and I, did we see it opening night?
Yeah.
Okay, we
believe
did.
you did.
Jesus Christ.
I didn't see it until Sunday.
But like, I remember trying, I still try,
Monday.
even though I hated the movie, I'm still trying to think of like things I liked. And like I said, Feral Wolverine was cool. James McAvoy I like a lot, although I think it's his weakest performance in the three that he's done.
It's a lot of people's weakest performance.
It's phoned in and terrible.
I think
and
the new
CG.
cast. I think like new Jean Grey and new Cyclops are fine.
Yeah. Fortunately, we didn't get that much of it.
Yeah.
You finally get the reveal of their outfits in the end. Whoop-de-doo. By now, I don't give a shit. And this trilogy, the fucking trilogy, like the original Star Wars trilogy is about Skywalker, becoming the good guy, and the redemption of Darth Vader, all that kind of stuff. This entire trilogy is about a man going bald. Because that's the big reveal is a man going, get out of my head, and his hair falling off his head, and then him with the fucking.
That's the last shot you see. The last shot in the trailer is like that, I guess, quote unquote, money shot.
Yeah, the ace in the hole
of Professor X looking disapprovingly at you while he's bald and doors close, and that's the last scene. That's the last shot of the film. You're not strong enough, Charles.
You're not. Oh my god. Wait, Chris, did you want to say something about Weapon X Wolverine? Let him do that before we go into "You're not fucking strong enough," Charles.
I was just going to agree that that the Weapon X, like even for me, someone who enjoyed the movie, and you're not, neither of you guys, even in my eyes, you're not wrong about any of the problems that you had. Like I agree with
and
everything.
You can fucking enjoy the movie.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not like, how could you enjoy this movie? I just hate it.
I have one of those weird abilities to enjoy a movie and still see all its faults. Zach.
I saw Batman v Superman. I enjoyed it more than this.
It's not a slight on Zach. He just understands what I'm saying. But I love you, Zach. Awesome Con was fun. But yeah. So
you were a lifesaver for the Science Channel.
We'll get to that next tomorrow, I guess, in terms of release dates.
Yeah, you'll see it.
Yeah. So I totally agree that for me, the singularity of disappointment in this movie was the Weapon X mask reveal or helmet reveal or whatever you want to call it, because it was like it looked like those like sunglasses that you can get where it flips up, and it's
I had those when I played baseball,
and it's just like a frame, like it's like
just
one
a visor or whatever,
worst ideas ever. It was like that without the flip down lenses, and then like chunkier on the sides. Like it was like Geordie LaForge's visor if it didn't cover the eyes.
Yeah.
And I was like, the fuck? Like I've never even read Weapon X before, but I know what
it's
it looks like.
And metal thing.
And looking at it, I'm like, that's pretty fucking metal. Like I want to see that on screen.
This massive VR helmet.
Yeah. And like they didn't even give us that. I know.
I don't agree with it, but I can understand why they did it. They're like, we have to show that it's Hugh Jackman.
I mean, again, but like, dude, we've had almost 20 years of it.
They take off the mask at the end, or they take off the visor.
You know how we know it's Will Jackman? Hugh Jackman, his claws pop out, and you know what I mean. And he runs around looking jacked and veiny.
In the way that only Hugh Jackman can.
Yeah. And then they could have showed his dong. We would have seen. We would
have known it was him.
We've seen his ass before.
We've totally seen his ass.
Yeah, I mean,
multiple times.
He could have popped the. Oh, here was what they could have. They could have popped the helmet off, and then she's just like, all I could pull was Logan, and he's like, hey. And then he fucking runs off to the obvious green screen winner scene. And
Jesus Christ,
it's terrible. Terrible.
You're not strong enough, Charles.
So yes, at the end of the movie, they have a mind battle inside of Charles' mind, and Charles gets his ass whooped, and
his ass fucked.
And it is funny, it's kind of funny, in his, his.
Yes,
yes,
he did.
Yes.
That was the only thing I could think of.
That's not my mind in the gutter, guys.
No, it's like it had to be there, the way it's shot.
Yeah. It was like that scene in one of the earlier episodes of Transformers,
where it looks like,
where it looks like what's the army jeep guy fucking the little kid in the ass.
Jazz.
No, it's not. Is it?
Either way,
but that
clip's available on you. Look up. Actually, don't look it up. You'll be fine. But just take our word for it. I don't want to fuck up your Google search history.
This is going to be a meme.
I already have Matthew Lewis underwear in my Google search history, so
this is going to be a meme and a GIF for all whatever the fuck for all time.
Right.
But when they can finally access it, but it looks like Apocalypse is fucking Charles in the ass.
What makes it worse is
you're not strong enough, Charles. And
I think
his face is all bloody and he's beat up.
To be totally honest, I think that's what made the movie for me.
What made the movie for me is when Sam just busted out laughing.
Right there in the theater.
Yeah,
just like
all like 6 people in the theater.
No, there was actually like quite a bit. And
Was there?
I remember there was somebody like during the Quicksilver, and maybe this is what killed me on the Quicksilver sequence. There was a person like right behind me that laughed every time Quicksilver saved somebody in the Quicksilver sequence.
Yeah.
He saves a lot of fucking people in the Quicksilver sequence.
Yeah,
it was just like
not Havoc though. They love killing X-Men in these movies, dude.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
The whole movie
goes out off camera.
The whole movie's dumb.
Yeah,
I
right.
try to find good things in movies. This movie had very little. I hated it. All the performances sucked. The CG sucked. The story was terrible. The reveal of Weapon X Wolverine was terrible. What else? I hate it. This is for me. This, and I've given it time. This goes down for me as easily one of the worst superhero movies I've ever seen.
Yeah.
The end.
Yeah.
So you would rather watch Batman vs Superman again?
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
but my
yeah.
my thing is, and I know I'm very biased because I give a shit about Batman and Superman. Like I fucking love Batman and Superman.
I'm wearing a Batman shirt right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
I don't love the X-Men. I like the X-Men movies. I don't really like, that maybe if I was a big X-Men fan, I don't know, it could pull me a little more, but I remember I was talking to a friend. I was like, here's how I sum up X-Men Apocalypse. I would rather watch X3 again, and I recently made a fucking vow that I would never watch X3 again. That's
Listen
how
to
I
that commentary.
that's
That's
how
where he does it.
That's how I feel about X-Men Apocalypse. Terrible
yeah.
movie.
To kind of change gears completely and kind of bring things together before we go out. We lost this year. We've lost. It isn't so much that we've lost, celebrities or musicians or actors
Or even like more.
Yeah,
You know.
we've lost. It's that we've lost paradigms. We've lost singular individuals, people that exemplify their craft. We've lost David Bowie, Prince. They exemplify, what music could be.
Yeah.
Alan Rickman exemplified like fine thespian ability, and Muhammad Ali, not just for boxing, certainly for boxing, but not just for boxing, exemplified what it was like. What it could be to be a superstar athlete, to be just like Michael Jordan defines basketball, Wayne Gretzky defines ice hockey. Muhammad Ali defines and transcends boxing, and
also standing up for his beliefs too.
Yeah,
and he did it in a way. There's a great speech because they've been playing a lot of things where, he refused to go to Vietnam, and he has this amazing speech where he talks about he's not. Anti, America. He's not going to burn a flag. He's not
pro-communism.
He's not doing any of this, but he's just going to, follow the law. And the law says, you go to jail if you're not going to, he's not running to Canada. He's not, and then somebody, I guess they didn't have it on camera, but there was a story that someone shouted out, "I'll take your place for $1,000." And without even missing a beat, he responded with, your life is worth more than $1,000. This is just a random stranger. But yeah, like Sam was saying with boxing, I mean, with so many people coming into a sport and being any sport, like Sam said, hockey or basketball or baseball, there's so many great talent and Hall of Famers and champions. But to be that one person that when someone says boxing, that person's name pops up immediately. Muhammad Ali is one of them. He is the one. The fact that you can say the champ or the greatest, you're talking about Muhammad Ali. Just real quick, my thing with Muhammad Ali is when I was 12 years old, I watched Rocky for the first time, and I've said plenty of times on here it's my favorite movie of all time. Even though that movie is really not about boxing, it uses boxing like Field of Dreams uses baseball to tell the story. It inspired me in a way that like the boxer is different to me as an athlete than any other sport.
Is it because he stands alone?
Well, it's because he stands alone, but it's more of this dedication and this craft, and a lot of times where boxers come from. Boxers usually come from a broken background situation or a tough life where the only out that you have is getting punched in the face and trying to be good enough to just get past the next guy. And it's not a guaranteed, making a lot of money. It's not, it's pain, that's your life, is being punched in the face and beaten like, gladiators in the ring. And so I really kind of romanticized the idea of a boxer. And I, as a silly 12-year-old, I was like, I want to be a boxer when I grow up. So, and my dad boxed in college and at West Point. And so he's like, well, he probably knew in the back of his mind, train this kid for one day and he'll fucking never want to do this ever. So that's exactly what he did. We bought a speed bag we still have in the garage. And we went on a run. We did the speed bag. We did all kind of stuff, and he just did it for a day or two. And I was like, of course, I was 12. I had my fascination with somewhere else immediately because I don't have that dedication to be a boxer. I never did, never will. And that's one of the reasons I admire him. So anyway, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to continue watching the Rocky movies and enjoy boxing from afar and I didn't even get to the point when you get punched in the face.
Oh, dude.
And
it's the best part.
Yeah. But getting punched in the face is no fun. But
everyone's like, oh, you get a throw punch. It's like, no, you will inevitably get punched in the face.
Probably get hit more often than you hit.
Yeah.
Now, Muhammad Ali is one of those guys that clearly, also because of his reach and his size and stuff, was able to take less punches than probably the average boxer would because he was so talented. But I remember going to Tower Records, and I remember going and I bought the Ace Frehley solo Kiss album, and I bought on VHS the Rumble in the Jungle.
Yeah.
And this is documentary about Ali going and fighting
George Foreman.
And
in Africa.
Yeah, and the said jungle. And
yes, the titular jungle.
And it's just this amazing documentary about
it's his comeback.
About Muhammad Ali and like the style and the flash and the flair, that he still had.
Yeah.
And really watching, this master at work.
Yeah.
And
even his strategy. And the thing is, like, he had lost I believe he had lost the title to Frazier.
Yeah. Oh, they had with the Thriller Manila and all that kind of stuff.
And Frazier is destroyed by George Foreman because Foreman could outmatch any boxer at the time, punch for punch. And Ali's strategy was, well, then I'm just going to have to wear him out.
The rope-a-dope.
Exactly. So, no, that was. I mean, again, it's been a kind of a. It's been a weird year for all that stuff. I usually don't give, too much. I don't really connect to a lot of celebrity deaths because I don't know these people.
Yeah, exactly.
But
this year has been exceptional because it's like you said, it's the quintessential people are the ones that we've been losing.
Yeah, Bowie is one of those figures that transcends his art. So Prince. Absolutely. You could argue Lemmy Kilmister for hard rock.
Sure, yeah. And, thinking back to celebrity, not celebrity, but I guess technically celebrities, but athlete deaths that really have, like, shaken at least the old Bozic household. I remember...
Yogi Berra died,
Yogi Berra dying. I remember when Mickey Mantle died,
Mm-hmm.
That was one of the few times I've ever seen my dad, like, really...
Joe DiMaggio.
Shaken up. I remember they had one time on it's kind of like a silly thing, but, like, on... Larry King Live, they had like the bottom crawl that Joe DiMaggio died. And Joe DiMaggio called the show, and he's like, I'm not dead. And they're like, oh, shit. They had to delete that real quick. Yeah. But, I mean, thinking back, and again, boxing is not the big sport that it used to be, but if you look at the outpour and outcry of Muhammad Ali, it's not about boxing.
Yeah. This is a guy that basically ended selective service, like, had been running constantly since the First World War. This is a guy that basically, like, put it out. He's like, why are we still doing this? Yeah. And then of course they passed the 25th Amendment that raises the enlistment age to 21 or the draft age. So he and I think a lot of it was because of the public outcry that arose when he refused to go to Vietnam.
And it's also it's I don't know exactly what the word is, but it's bittersweet, I guess, seeing a lot of boxers react to it. I'm a big fan of Mike Tyson, and one of my favorite things I saw was there was this documentary. It's on Hulu. I can't remember what it's called, but I think it's 6 episodes, and each episode follows a certain aspect of Tyson's career. There's one episode about Evander Holyfield and their relationship, and one of the other episodes is about, I guess, standing on the shoulders of giants and him paying respects to all the great boxers that came before him. And one of them was he goes to Ali's house and he entertains Muhammad Ali. They pretend to spar, and he basically just almost plays the Charlie Chaplin kind of, clown slapstick character just to light up Muhammad Ali's face, to go over there and tell funny stories and reminisce about boxing and life. And still, for someone, Mike Tyson's so far out of boxing now, in terms of ever, throwing the rings on and getting the gloves and getting on in the ring. But to see two masters, even though Muhammad Ali's not talking to him, two masters talking about that sport is fantastic.
as an addendum, it's Amendment 26 that that lowers the voting age to 18, because the idea was if you could fight and die for your country, you can, you should be able to vote for the people that send you to fight and die.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was Ted Kennedy that really was a big proponent. Amendment 25 is about the line of secession. Anyway, yeah. So he is he will always be the greatest in life or death. So, but yeah. But again, if you want the pick me up, I Hate Fairyland comes out.
That's true.
June 15th.
That's true.
And yeah. Thanks again, Skottie Young, for coming on. It was as much fun for us as I hope it was for you.
Mm-hmm.
And to everyone listening at home, thank you again. Like 100 episodes. We've been doing this for.
That's crazy.
Yeah, we've been doing this for a while. We've got the big 2
almost 2 years. Yeah,
almost 2 years.
Yeah, it's coming up. 2-year anniversary would be in August. So keep But
keep hitting that download button.
Yeah, hopefully we've you haven't gotten sick of catching up with us, because we haven't gotten sick of catching up with you. Even though there's no room for we don't.
Yeah. Pause for response.
Yeah.
Zach.
Yeah, and that's I think how we'll end the episode, pausing for a response.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Good night, Eric Bana.
This has been another Geek Out production. If you enjoyed what you heard, hey, we've got a new commentary every Monday. We've got a special episode every Friday. Of course, there's the usual catching up show every Wednesday. And you get book club episodes just about every Tuesday these days. Thanks for listening.